Glaciers, grizzlies, and great views. Today we're talking about the Canadian Rockies.
Welcome to Vacation Mavens, a family travel podcast with ideas for your next vacation and tips to get you out the door. Here are your hosts, Kim from Stuffed Suitcase and Tamara from We Three Travel.
So, Tamara, you are back to school. I know for both of us, our girls are off for another year at school, and that means we are back at Vacation Mavens, ready to record with some fun summer travels behind us. And so today we're going to talk about your big mother-daughter trip that you did this year, which was to the Canadian Rockies.
Yeah. And if I'm a little out of it, I think it's because I'm still trying to get my head around this whole back to school thing.
I know.
Think we're good at it by now, but I feel like the older she gets, the more like we're just looking at each other and we're like, do we really have to do this? We really have to get up early tomorrow, like that whole thing. So
yeah. Today was kind of funny for Lizzie because she just had it's called like a link day. So for the high school, she moved over to the high school this year. And so for the sophomores, which is the first years at that school, she got kind of an orientation day as the first day. So the juniors and seniors get the day off. They don't start until tomorrow, but some of the ones that are in like leadership come and they act as kind of guides for the sophomores to lead them around, and they play games and go through their schedules and have pizza lunch, I guess. So it's kind of a fun day for the sophomores.
Yeah, that's a little bit what Hannah had yesterday with the orientation.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, looking back on our girls' trip,
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm really glad that we did it because I'm wondering if this will be the last big one for a while. Like, of course, we'll still have time together, but, next year she already has some ideas of what she wants to do. And, the closer we get to college and everything else and summer jobs, it's all going to get more difficult. So I'm really glad that we had just really, really fabulous time together. And we did a lot of things that were like good bonding things,
That's awesome. Yeah. It looked like you guys had great time. So why don't you tell everyone kind of what your itinerary looked like or how many days you spent where all you went?
Yeah, so we had 10 days altogether, and I wanted to break it up because I really wanted to get to see a lot of different areas. I didn't want to spend everything like in Banff. We actually ended up not staying in Banff at all just because it's so pricey and it's so crowded there. I wanted to get a little bit more remote, a little bit more away from the crowds because, it's like a natural place where everything is gorgeous. I didn't want to be surrounded by a million people. So we started off, we flew into Calgary, and then we had about an hour and a half to drive. We went the first 2 nights in Kananaskis, which is just south of Banff. And it's not part of the national park. Like there's a couple of provincial parks right in that area. So we stayed 2 nights there. And then we went up to Canmore, which is actually just 20 minutes south of Banff. It's a lot like Banff in terms of it being like a cute, small mountain town, but it doesn't have the same number of visitors. And it also is a lot more affordable. So we stayed 2 nights in Canmore, and we kind of used that as our base for exploring Banff. Nice. And then we went up, we decided to break up our drive to Jasper with 1 night at Lake Louise. And then we spent our final 4 nights in Jasper, which is definitely less crowded than Banff, and really, really beautiful. So that was kind of it. And then we spent the final day just driving back down to Calgary, stayed overnight, and then flew out very early the next morning. So a lot of it depends on like when you're flying in, how you want to structure the trip. But I think a lot of people do usually do some kind of combination of like Banff, Lake Louise, Jasper, or maybe if they have less time, they just hit 1 or 2 of those.
How long did it take you to get from Jasper to Calgary then, head back?
I would say about 5 to 6 hours.
Okay. I was just going to give people an option also. You could go to Edmonton if you wanted to hit a different Alberta city if you didn't have a round trip flight. If you were going to come in from Calgary, you could fly out of Edmonton because it's about 5 hours between Jasper and Edmonton. And Edmonton has, the big West Edmonton Mall. So maybe that would be an option for people.
When I was looking at it, it looked like around a similar drive, to Edmonton or Calgary, but to do like the one-way flights.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. Sometimes,
crazy.
Sometimes 2 one-ways are the same price, but every once in a while, round trip still beats them out. So, it sounds like you had a lot of fun.
We did. It was just so gorgeous. And I realized like Hannah really loves mountains.
That's awesome.
She seems to just get really excited. It's the whole teen thing. It's really hard to see. They don't put their emotions on display. You know what I mean? Like they're so much more reserved. And I even remember when I was a teen, like I think we were like with my aunt and my mom, and she kept saying like, is she having a good time? She's never smiling. And it's just, that's just not the way that they go around. They don't, bubble up the way that little kids will with their wow, but she was really like, wow, look at that. Wow. Like she was really, really into it. Really, I think it was just such a great place for a girls, mother-daughter trip.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's all I can say.
That's awesome. So what were some of the highlights that you think people should definitely, do, or what did you want to share about if they're taking a trip to the Canadian Rockies?
Well, we really loved Kananaskis. It just felt much, much more remote. It's really only, I think, a half hour or so to Banff, maybe a little bit further, but it has all of the scenery without any crowds. We stayed at a place called the Kananaskis Mountain Lodge, which definitely has the feel of like a ski village, but there's not much else around, so you're kind of eating dinner there and, and that's kind of it, not a whole lot of choices. But Hannah really liked that location the best. And I think it was just the views and the lack of people and the wildlife. But the only bad thing is that because there are fewer people, there are a lot of bears. And everywhere we went, it was like big signs of like, expect bear encounters. It wasn't like, bear warning. It was like expect bear encounters. And they had all kinds of bear alerts. And I was looking things up on an app and they had signs everywhere. And it really freaked us out. So like having us, just the two of us, we didn't really want to do a lot of big hikes because we were just nervous about it. If I was with a bigger group or something, it would be a little different. So that did change our plans like a little bit. The good thing is the one time that we saw grizzly bears, we were in the car.
Yeah,
so
nice.
That made me happy. We were driving and we looked up on a hill, alongside the road. There was a mama and two cubs just meandering along. But we stopped into the visitor center at the Peter Lockheed Provincial Park, and they had a listing of all the recent wildlife, and it was like mama and two cubs, like for grizzlies, like all over the place. I'm like, wow, she's really getting around. And, and there was also like a sighting of a spirit bear, which would have been really cool.
Nice.
And black bears. There's a lot of wildlife down there. But one of our favorite things that we did do is I looked up which hikes hadn't had any bear warnings. And there was one as we drove from Kananaskis up to Canmore. It was called Chester Lake. And so we decided we're going to stop in and we're going to do that hike. And I thought I looked up like the difficulty or how long it was, but I clearly was not entirely prepared. And we're like doing this hike and I'm like, oh, I really should have let Glenn like know where we are. And I really should have some kind of GPS device or, something. But anyway, it ended up being like a 6 or 7 mile round trip hike. But the first 2 miles were basically uphill. And so there were so many times where she was like, this better be worth it. And, we definitely contemplated turning around, but we stuck with it. And I'm really glad because we ended up getting out to this beautiful like emerald lake that was nestled right up against the foot of a mountain. And there were like 3 other people there fishing. And otherwise we only saw like 3 people on our way in and like 1 person on our way out. So it was definitely really remote. We did not see any wildlife. There was a time when we were hiking and we were playing music on her phone really loud because we didn't have like the breath to talk and yell really loud because we were like huffing and puffing trying to climb. But it was really good. It was one of those things kind of like the hike that you and I did in Maine where you just feel so good after you finished it. You just feel like you really accomplished something. And I feel like us doing that together was a special time.
That's awesome. Yeah. Did you guys carry bear spray with you?
Oh, yeah. As soon as I got there, I bought bear spray.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even still, we were nervous.
Of course. Yeah. But you think about all the people that hike there safely and stuff. You just have to be alert and aware. But I'm glad you guys found something good. So what were the other highlights that you had?
Well, I would say her number one And probably surprisingly, my number one was also, we did the Via Ferrata on Mt Norquay in Banff. And
tell people what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically, how do you describe it? It's a little bit like rock climbing or mountaineering, but made in a way that's supposed to be for everyone. But I will say, like, you definitely still need a decent amount of fitness for it. Basically, you take the chairlift up to the top and then you hike a little bit and then you clip on, you have a harness and you clip on a cable. So it's kind of like when you do an adventure course and you move your clips from cable to cable, as you move. But you are climbing a mountain and clinging to the side of it. There are some little footholds. There's some bars, almost like ladders that you can grab onto. But there are times when you're like, balancing on your toes a little bit, on a hold, and, you have to really pull yourself up. There was we did a 4-hour one, and there was one bridge that was just like a single plank going across a chasm with cables on either side that you can hold on to. And that one actually freaked me out more than I expected. I know I hate when it's just like a single cable and you have to walk across that, because I just don't like that at all. But I thought I would be okay with the plank, but and because I was completely fine when we did like the rope bridge thing in Ireland, but it was just that there was no, like, that one at least had netting on the side. Here it's just like this narrow plank and then the two, cables on either side. But let me tell you, the views were definitely spectacular, and it was challenging, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I had definitely made myself really nervous. The night before, I was like, oh, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to freak out? And it was also the kind of thing where she kept saying, like, thank you, Mom. I know you didn't really want to do that, and you did it for me, and I really appreciate it. Like, I loved it. And, she was in her element. She absolutely loved it. And it was good. I feel like, okay, I got my mom points for that one, and we'll remember it. Like, we'll definitely always remember it.
Yeah, that's going to be an amazing memory. So
I was exhausted afterwards, though, because we did that and then we drove up to Lake Louise, and on the way we stopped and did like this other hike to Johnston Canyon. And then by the time we checked into our hotel, I walked in and it was nice because they had actually upgraded us to a suite, and it had a big jacuzzi tub. And I'm like, I am so taking a bath and just like soaking in that jacuzzi tub. I was aching everywhere. And the next day, it's like, if we were to be able to go see Lake Moraine, because they close off the parking lot as soon as it's full, everyone told us you need to be there at 5:15 in the morning if you want to get into that parking lot. And like, I'm sorry, but there are a lot of beautiful lakes, and that's just insane, right? And so we decided, you know what, we are so tired from today. Like, we are not getting up at 5:00 in the morning to be able to get to this parking lot by 5:15. So it was the one thing that we kind of missed, but we were okay with it.
Yeah, it's nice when you can have flexibility in your travel and kind of figure out what really matters. So.
Yeah. Cool. But I think we definitely loved just driving up the Icefields Parkway and stopping at different things. That Peyto Lake was gorgeous.
Yeah.
But a lot of those places have, a ton of crowds.
Yeah.
But it was still like really beautiful. Just driving through the mountains is beautiful. There's really no internet. So, we're just hanging out and chatting or listening to music, and it was good. And then we spent 4 nights in Jasper, and we had a really good time there too. And one of the things that we did that was really unique was that we did this thing called a picnic with Jasper Food Tours. Basically, you hike up, like up a mountain, but it's not too hard. And then at the top, she does a backcountry cooking lesson. And so it's something that you could do if you're camping, but even if you never plan on camping, it was still like really fun to do. So we basically were at the top of the mountain. She sets up a table, and we brought in, like, she had a big pack that had the table, and I carried another pack that had really expertly packed like all the food and all the equipment that we would need. And we made dal, like Indian dal. We made rice. We made chili, which is basically like dehydrated, and we just had to hydrate it. We made this little kind of fry bread, which was, it was so good. I'm like, I have to make this at home. And we made chai tea, and it was great. And then we're just having this great meal. Everyone that was like hiking kept coming by, and I'm like, well, you could start selling this up here, because they were just like, what's going on? But it was just cool. We just, then had that picnic at the top, and then we packed everything up and hiked back down. So it was just really unique and fun. So I felt like we really enjoyed doing something different. And it was actually something that Hannah picked because we were either going to do a float trip or like a whitewater rafting kind of thing or that. And she had just gone whitewater rafting in Maine. And so she wanted to do this. And I was surprised, although I kind of wanted to do the float thing. So I'll do that next time.
Yeah.
But I really, really did enjoy the picnic. So
nice. Yeah, it's fun to find kind of new things that's, that aren't the traditional mountain activities, because I've never heard of that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was actually brand new. They had just opened it up. And then I think also we really did enjoy, we took a boat cruise on Moline Lake, I think it is. Yep. Yeah. And out to Spirit Island, which is just really beautiful. And Hannah liked that we got to see a lot of the lake. And yeah, so that was another one of her highlights. She also really liked the horseback riding that we did in Banff. Mm-hmm. But the only downside to that was that it rained. So basically we took a horseback ride out to a cowboy cookout, had our dinner, and as we were about to get back on the horses for the ride back, it started raining pretty hard.
Oh.
So we were pretty soaked.
That's tough.
Yeah. She still liked it. I could have done without that part of it.
The beginning part was good. Just focus on that.
Really pretty views because it was right by the Bow River, which has that blue of the, the glacier. And so it was, really pretty views. We saw elk on our way back. And
nice. Paul did a bike trip out there. They biked the Icefields Parkway and Bow River, he jumped in at one point. It was, it's a glacier. It was pretty cool.
It's a little cold.
Yeah, but it felt good, I guess, after a hard day of bike riding. So
I was shocked by how many, like you saw like the backroads tours and just other people just biking along that. I was impressed, because I can't even bike out of my neighborhood. The hill is too steep.
The hills are brutal on that course. Yeah, it was insane. Cool. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Any special places you stayed that you want to share or talk about, or any other highlights or things that you want to emphasize?
I really loved the Post Inn in Lake Louise. So I think a lot of people will stay at the Fairmont, but the Fairmont is like, I don't know, $1,000 a night or something, in the summer. It's crazy. At least one of the Fairmonts. There's Fairmont in Banff, Lake Louise, and in Jasper. I remember looking at one of them and it was that expensive, but the Post Inn was not nearly that expensive. And it was just really beautiful. It kind of had like a Swiss chalet kind of look to it. The only bad thing is it's not right on the lake. So you do have to deal with getting to the lake and trying to find parking. But it was, going to Lake Louise was actually pretty funny because everyone rents those red canoes. Yep. They actually, one of the guides that we were with at one point told me that they make $35,000 a day on the canoe rentals there because they charge like $140 for an hour. But it was so funny because it was just like when you go ride boats in Central Park. It's just like people were just like jumping in for the photo op, going out there, and they had no idea how to canoe, and they were like going in circles. We were like looking at this one couple and they were like screaming at each other because they couldn't steer it. I'm like, you just paid $140 for that. So
it's kind of like an Amazing Race journey, right? Like figure out who's going to survive the trials of travel.
It was really amusing to watch because it was just cluttered with, with these red canoes everywhere. I mean, they're beautiful.
Yeah. It's beautiful, and they're beautiful photos that people get out there. But wow, $140. That's steep. And you can only put like two people, right? I don't think you can get three people.
I think so.
Yeah. So a family of four is looking at $280.
Yeah. We were going to canoe when we were up in Jasper because there it was like $40 or $50 an hour. But the one day that we went out to do that, like this huge storm blew in. So we're like, yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't get to do that. But I really love Jasper. It's really beautiful. It's not as crowded. I liked the town. You could much more easily like drive in and park. There were plenty of restaurants. Yeah, I just liked it. Nice. I was glad that we spent lots of time there. We stayed at a little place called Jasper House Bungalows. So it was just like little cabins. And ours was just like a 1-bedroom, had a little kitchen, a little eating area, and then Hannah slept on a pullout in the living area.
Nice.
So we could have shared a bed, but we were both ready for some space. So
Cool. And I saw you went to Athabasca Falls, which is a big, nature tourist site at Jasper. So
yeah, I think I'm going to write a post all about like the places that we stopped on the Icefield Parkway and then like things we did in Jasper, but then I'll also do like a big itinerary post. So once you hear this, you can look for all those on my website.
Very cool. Yeah. And for anyone wondering, kind of, it makes me think about when I did the Rocky Mountaineer trip through the Rockies.
Right, you spent some time in Banff then.
Yeah. Yeah. I came in and so I had a day and a half in Banff because I did the same thing. So flew into Calgary and then we took a shuttle from Calgary into Banff. And they put me up in Banff at the Elkin Avenue or Elk Plus Avenue. I think I would say Elkin Avenue, but it was a nice, simple, hotel. I'm sure it cost like a 5-star and it was probably a 3.5 star, but they had, kind of nice, simple rooms and nice lobby. And then they were, close to downtown and they were right outside. I loved it because at Banff, one of my big tips is to wake up at sunrise, or just before, and then head out onto the road and you kind of stand in the median. And I got a couple of pictures of me with the big mountain in the backdrop and then kind of on the city Banff Main Street. So that was
nice. You definitely can't do that in the middle of the day.
Nope, you cannot. So that was the one little thing there. So it's a pretty cool memory picture. But we did the gondola up to the top and then did that little. Did you go up to the top did you do the Skytram in Banff?
We didn't because we did a Skytram in Jasper.
Okay.
And so we figured not to do it in both. Plus we were doing the Mt Norquay, the chairlift up to the Via Ferrata.
Right,
so we
figured
we got that covered.
Yeah, Banff is kind of cool. You head up and it just gives you a really pretty view of the mountains and then the town kind of nestled there. And there's a short little walk with some red chairs and a big near polar bear at the top. And you can actually eat up there. They have a restaurant at the top as well. But anyway, so that was kind of what we did. And then we went
Let me ask you about that though. Because one thing we actually really didn't like the Jasper Skytram because it's so crowded. So they jam, I don't know, like 20, 30 people into the car and you get up there and it's not until you're on the way up that they say, oh, and there's like a 40-minute wait for the tram on the way back. So it's like you went up there and so you really had to plan for a lot of time to be able to do it. So I didn't like that.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. That's kind of a little bit like the one in Vancouver, but at Banff, it's still the small chairs. So I think you can fit 6 in a chair. And so it's more like
it's just a chair.
It's like a chair lift. Well, it's not a chair. No, it's a gondola, but I don't know how to explain it. It's enclosed.
It's more one that you would use for skiing. Though.
Yes. Yeah. It's an enclosed ski one. Exactly. Yeah. It's not an open air chair lift. It's a ski lift more than, exactly. And it's short and it doesn't go quite. So it's a little different. And, so, but there can be a wait to come back down, but not that long. And it moves fast because it's like a chairlift. Yeah.
Got it.
So, that was kind of one of the things we did. And I know we took a day tour on kind of one of those buses, which is not necessarily the best way, but it's nice that you don't have to deal with parking or any of that. And they took us to some of the big sites. And one place I fell in love with that I saw you guys went was to Jack Lake. And I think if you're wanting, if you're wanting beautiful, like photos and scenery, that's a really pretty shot. And then right next to it is the Lake Minnewanka, I think, which is kind of supposed to be a big recreation lake. I personally think Jack Lake has better images and photos, but Lake Minnewanka is really big if you're looking for water sports and activities.
Yeah, that one it has a beach and it has like a boat tour that you can do. Yeah, but I like Jack because we didn't walk all the way around, but we walked maybe like halfway, like we kind of hiked down to one end, then just like sat there and just watched the lake for a while. So I like that. Yeah,
it's really pretty. Yeah, so those were some of the things I did in Banff, and then got on the Rocky Mountaineer there, which is really awesome. They have their first passage to the West route is a 2-day trip that goes, you can either get it in Banff or Lake Louise, and it goes both directions. So you start in Vancouver and end in Banff or Lake Louise, or you start in Banff and Lake Louise and end in Vancouver. So you can choose which direction you want. And you stay overnight in Kamloops at a hotel. You don't sleep on the trains. So I've got posts all about what that experience was like, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a neat way to see the mountains, from a train.
Yeah, I would still do it.
Yeah.
Even though I've seen like the other part, I think it still looks really cool. We actually saw the train when we were in Jasper.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah. Well, we drive that route, when I first started dating Paul, we went and had a little, getaway to Banff, and we've driven the Icefields Parkway a couple times, but we normally avoid all of that chaos and we go up to Jasper and then over to Banff, over to Edmonton. So anyways.
When you've driven the Icefields Parkway, have you ever stopped at the Athabasca Glacier and done like the Ice Explorer or anything like that?
Paul did that when he did that bike trip, but as a family, We've never done it. We've stopped at the one of the hot springs once, which in my personal opinion, I do not recommend the hot springs around there. I mean, they're kind of one of those things that people rave about, but it's honestly just a really expensive swimming pool that's naturally heated, and you're kind of using a public hot tub with a lot of people. I don't know. It's just not my cup of tea. So.
We were going to go to one, but it also had a really good hike, but it was about an hour. It was the Mia Hot Springs outside of Jasper.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we decided we needed a break from the big hikes because we'd had, such a busy few days. And so we decided we weren't going to do the hike. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to drive an hour and 25 minutes just to sit in a pool kind of thing.
Yep.
So we ended up not doing that. But I know what you mean. Even in Iceland, some of those are like that. And like, unless it really looks like this natural hot spot, like I don't really want to just go to a warm pool.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I think you need to find the ones that aren't commercialized as much, which you normally have to hike to or get to. I know that's how it is in Washington. There's some hidden ones, but you don't always know if people are going to be clothed once you get there. So that's the other little aspect of it.
It's true.
Anyways. So did you guys do the tramway, the Icefields tramway, or the Glacier, whatever it's called?
Yeah, we actually did this. So they have on the Glacier there, there's like a Glacier Center or Icefield Center that you stop at. And then you can either do like a hike out to the Glacier and then a hike on the Glacier. But we've done that in Iceland. So we wanted to do something a little bit different and maybe like a little bit less time since we were planning our whole drive. So we did the Ice Explorer, which basically is one of those really large vehicles that goes out onto the glacier, and then you have some time to get out and walk around.
Right.
But Hannah and I definitely felt kind of uncomfortable about it from the beginning because of the environmental aspect of it. And I went into it kind of thinking, okay, they're going to tell us about like what they're doing to minimize the environmental impact of having these giant trucks driving on the glacier. And it wasn't really like that. And then when we got out there, I feel like they didn't really do a good job of educating people about how dangerous a glacier can be. And actually, our particular bus driver, I think, was just careless in that. Like somebody had said, like, can you walk on a glacier without a guide? And she was like, sure you can. And I'm like, oh, because I know from Iceland, like, you cannot do that. And then she like kind of backed off and she's like, oh yeah, I always tell people you can walk on a glacier if you want to. And then she's like, well, you probably should have a guide. You should, you should definitely go with a guide. But she like backed it down. But I'm like, all people were listening to was yes, you should, like they tune out the second part of the thing. And then when we got out there, there's basically like this area where you stand on the ice and you can take pictures and stuff. You have like, I don't know, half an hour or something like that. And there are flags all around, like country flags you can take your picture with. And then there are also all these red signs that say boundary area. And she did say like, stay within the boundary area. And then you can like cross like a little like stream in the glacier. And then it's like almost like you climb up like 3 or 4 feet. And then there's like another level of the glacier. And all these people, it's like one person did it. And then everyone like sheep just followed along. Mm-hmm. They crossed that boundary. They climbed up on that part of the glacier. One of them was like jumping across like this like crevice or like fissure in the glacier, like to another side. And I was like, oh, this is so dangerous because you just really can't go without a guide. Like glaciers change all the time. They're always moving. That's the whole part of what makes it a glacier. And so you can have crevices opening, you can have holes. Like it's just, you really can't do that without a guide. And so I was kind of like freaking out about it. And then no one was saying anything. Finally, like one of the other drivers of the truck came like running out, and he was like, "Get off of there right now." He was screaming, and people were like, what? I didn't know. And they got up back on the bus, and she's like, "Oh, I see you guys got in trouble." And I'm like, "You really shouldn't joke about it, And somebody's like, "Well, I didn't see any signs. If they don't want you to go up there, there should be signs." And I was like, "There were signs right there." And he was like, "Well, I didn't see any." And I'm like, he's like, "All I saw were flags." I'm like, "They're right next to the flag." So I don't know. That was kind of like my feeling. Like, I feel like if I did it again, I would probably either just hike out to the foot of the glacier, or I would do one of those glacier hikes where you hike out to the foot and then you hike with a glacier guide on the glacier, because it just made me uncomfortable the way people were just kind of not being educated about some of the risks and some of the environmental pieces of it. And so I don't know.
I think that makes sense. It's good to let everyone know. And, I think sometimes people are just, it gets so mundane that they forget how to, take care of nature, and then also appreciate the seriousness of ever-changing nature. So,
well, that's the thing. I think that people are just doing this like tourist thing. They're on a bus, they're stopping, and they're just doing even like some of the hikes that got a little steep. People weren't prepared for that because they think they're just going to walk out and there's the waterfall or, whatever. So someone was actually on our glacier tour, and she was wearing a skirt with sandals with heels, no. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you're walking on ice. What? So I just think, they're not really thinking about what it takes to do these things. So,
well, and the tour groups that they're with, or the, company isn't educating people. Like, you must wear closed-toed shoes. You must do this. You must, they're not taking care of. I mean, your driver should have been saying, that's the boundary line, if that's a danger.
Yeah, exactly.
They should be a little more involved. So, well, that's a good heads up.
Those were that was kind of the only kind of downside of things. Yeah. But we otherwise, we really had a great trip, and I just think it's a fabulous, fabulous destination.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you guys had so much fun and got to enjoy it. It's a beautiful area of the world.
Yep. Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing about a few of our trips from this summer. We have a couple more to go, but in case you haven't noticed, we're trying to make our episodes a little bit shorter because we realize that everyone doesn't always have over an hour to listen to us every week. So what we're going to do is try to break it up a little bit, where we tell you about some of our travels, and then on a separate episode, we'll do some of our interviews. So we'd love to get your feedback on the new format. It's not too different, but whether you like it or not, we would love to hear from you. So just shoot us a message on social media, or you can always email us at podcast@vacationmavens.com.
And as always, we thank you for being loyal listeners. And if you want to invite a friend, now's a great time since we're starting a new series. And stay tuned for our next episode.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.